Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. The title is Patience of the Attributeless. And I would like to speak about the command of existence. Whether human beings like it or not, we are being commanded, our state of existence is being commanded by the forces of nature. In many movies, in many films, we see, for example, war films, there's a speech. There's a speech given or a sort of command given or a sort of directive found that suddenly the whole world, the environment or that moment moves towards. For me, something fascinating, like a fascinating observation, was to kind of like wonder about nature and wondering, okay, of course, minds came first, there was a world, then there came individual minds. There came individuals and then individuals with the potential to consider minds. But I'm kind of fathoming it in the sense as if all of existence, as if it was given a command, go forth and change, and everything just marched forth. There's been times I've thought of the universe as if it's like like how we see like a goldfish in a plastic bag, and the plastic bag has a hole in it, and all the water, the whole universe of that goldfish is being pulled towards a sort of leaking into another dimension. Imagine we realize our universe is leaking into another universe. Therefore, to wonder about the ultimate destination of patience is to wonder why you're moving. The forces of the natural world appear to us mindless, and once light becomes the bus or the airplane, or let us say light sails the information into our eyes, then it comes in touch with the mind. That means it's as if light is touching our mind. Pretty much nature is moving. It was moving before we existed to ourselves. Our existence was inseparable from nature. Due to unique circumstances, we separated from nature. Now, to wonder about the setting or why a human being needs to be patient and what is even the ultimate form of patience. Patience allows more information to be processed before the decision. And now to be as patient as an attributeless beings, that means it's endless patience. That means imagine you could just sit in a moment and endless patience, conscious patience, a conscious observation of the stance of being. And even if we look at the word substance, substance, the word substance means what's standing underneath, you know? Before conscious individualism, the commands of existence for the creature were limited to the ecosystem. So we can say, before speech, before individual conscious recognition of self and other, we have been all listening to our world experientially. The environment seems like a program, at least in this moment I can say, seems like a program we stepped out of. And the only way we could do that, any creature can do that, the only way you can leave a world is by no longer being a self of that world. It's the same with the inner realms in regards to, let's say, you closed your eyes, you fathomed the geometrical shape, then your attention either went through this shape or the attention became the shape and the whole shape moved to different landscapes. If one fears the past, they cannot be patient. If one desires the future, they cannot be patient. Patience ultimately is in the presence. It's in an instance. Alan Watts had this thing where he said, imagine you're washing dishes. Imagine you're someone who has to wash like 200 dishes or something. And instead of thinking every dish to be a separate dish, as if the person's like, oh man, I gotta clean 200 dishes. Instead, it's as if Alan Watts was saying in the Zen vision, it's as if you are only cleaning one plate. The whole time, even though it's 200 different plates, but you're cleaning one plate, as if when you are in the presence of the instantaneous, of the instant. There is endless patience. Really, without a sort of contentment with how the presence of the moment is unknown, I don't know how people can just be comfortable with knowledge. Usually it's like if you're not comfortable with the known, you're uncomfortable with the unknown. But if the person is comfortable with the known, then they can become comfortable with the unknown. But if the person isn't comfortable with the known, whatever the known finds, it's going to be uncomfortable. BKJW in the chat section, thank you for your support. And if there's any questions, questions are welcomed by the audience. If one establishes a conscious relationship with their world experientially, not indirectly, conceptually, that means when somebody says, like, if I start talking about skydiving and the person imagines skydiving, that's technically an experience, but it's an experience in your subtler planes of abstraction, or I would say your inner realms or your subjective realms. There are some things that are, one can see the potential of it being real, but then there's some things the person cannot see its reality, cannot experience it unless they go through it. You know, it's like you can't, it's like skydiving is on some level unspeakable, the experience of it, but the idea of it, of course, and the concept can be spoken about. So I find when it comes to the attributeless, it's something similar, where you gotta experience attributelessness. But what would that mean? Because everything we're defining, that means the question would be, if you are patient in an attributeless way, who is patient? Or what is that patience for? A method of reaching this patience of the attributeless, I just remembered the Sufi method of it, as spoken by Attar and various other mystics, is to die before you die, but not a physical death, an ideological death of what you never were from the beginning. An example would be, imagine in your childhood you were a person, everybody were like, you're a good person, you're a good person. Suddenly, when you do something bad, the weight of that hits you, you know? And that weight is actually an inner death. I find emotions happen when there is casualties in the war of thoughts behind their eyes. It's a abrupt change in attention, or anything the person doesn't consciously do and it changes something in their life, they get emotional about. You know, this is a cool thing. Let me see if the dictionary has patience, like the definition. Excuse me. To continue, and guys, please be patient with the extra noises and the pauses. You see, patience, the noun, here it says the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, problems, or suffering without becoming annoyed or anxious. So you see, it's a behavioral definition. It's a sort of stoic mindfulness, patience. But I would say it's not too, let's say we have to create, let's say, two types of patience. Let's say there's one unconditional patience and a conditional patience. The unconditional patience would be as if like you're patient with someone who is, let's say, further behind on the mountain, or you're patient with your children or your grandchildren. Do you know? That's an unconditional patience because you know who the person is, because you care for the life force. There is an ultimate sort of tolerance of that being, let's say. But I would say conditional patience is patience in settings that is unfamiliar. Do you know? That means that's really society for me. It's like, um, It's like the more I am in my own sphere of attention only, the less information there is to process. But imagine if you're in one room and you just wanted to see what's accessible to you, information, you have your eyes, right? But the more people who enter the room, the more angles and dimensions the moment is getting, you know? And here's the thing. How many movies have we seen that there's this novice warrior, and this novice warrior wants to attain mastery. And when the novice warrior challenges the master, like a scene that's coming to me is like the scene for the movie Itman, right? The master has a patience that is unconditional, as if the more you see dimensions into something, the more you know how to respond, so the less there is a reason for impatience, you know? Impatience sometimes can be with ourselves. Sometimes you can be impatient with someone you can be impatient with them, not because of who they are, because how you feel when you're around them, you know? In Vedic yogic thought, there's this story and vision of the two birds. Imagine two branches of a tree, and on the bottom branch, we find a bird who has never stopped moving. This bird has never stopped moving. From the beginning of its life, it has been working for itself, working for the others, working for the building a nest, finding food, just endless activity from the moment attention is born to itself. you know so that's the lower bird. Now this how the story goes is on the top bird. It's not much of a story, but but on the top on the top branch there is the same exact bird, not a clone, the same exact bird, and this bird has never moved, has never changed, has never suffered, has never found joy, has had experience of like the behavioral joy. It is in some sense of the part of and you that is so energy it can't be created or destroyed. Now, in certain ancient schools of thought, they were seeing the concept of energy, like if it's like to them the idea of the soul equated consciousness plus energy. So when energy is conscious, they call that a soul. But now we've stripped away the consciousness towards a sort of hallucination of the projection of the brain most immediately. We're not treating our brains like antennas, we're treating them like film projectors. But if we treated them like antennas, then the antenna, based on its signal and range, has an ability to be an identity or a shape or whatnot. And the inseparability of the idea of energy and soul, as I gave a talk earlier today, that inseparability is that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It changes from form to form. The soul cannot be destroyed. It's not a form to be destroyed, but it changes from form to a point that in Buddhist thought and even Vedic thought, the idea of reincarnation is there. There was this book written by Rishi Vyasa called the Puranas. In one of the Puranas, there's this thing I remember from it where it was like there was this yogi, like these are like, imagine like it's like this yogi, if it, the yogi had lived through 7,500 apocalypses, not 7,500 years or eons, 7,500 ends of the realm. It's like there's the story in Zen. There's these three Zen monks, they're sitting, you know, and one of them says, I have realized I am emptiness. And the second one, all three of them are sitting and they've closed their eyes. Then the second one, suddenly there's a pause and he says, I too have realized I am emptiness. Then there's a pause, and then the third monk is like, I too have also realized emptiness. And then suddenly the first Zen monk is like, it's like, he looks at them and he's like, this is nothing. I realized emptiness first. The monk is like, look at these guys. I found emptiness, they're copying me. They're copying my emptiness. So similarly to that, I would say it would be like for yogis, for the yogic mindset, the ever presence of being. You see, we are defining our morality based on our mortality. Because we're temporary beings, all right, take things seriously, take certain behaviors, rules, laws, regulations, ways of living seriously. If we were all immortal right now, physically, there would be no reason to do anything. That means if this world was like a photo, like a living photo, that it was immortal, that means that's what immortality means. Something in history has stopped changing. Now everything in the natural realm changes. emptiness is um, really uh, the most basic thing the human being needs for psychological stability, to attempt to fathom the absence of meaning. That means so many people are trying to find meaning, not realizing the curtains will be pulled and the theatrical performance will end. That means there was two kinds of knowledge, they would say. Temporary knowledge, eternal knowledge. There's a story, Sufi story, from a young Rumi, Jalaluddin Maulana Rumi, when he was young. This guy is reading a book, like he's in his, like, let's say late 20s. He's reading a book by a fountain, this science book. This spiritual nomad comes out of nowhere. This very mystical human being by the name of Shams Tabrizi. Mystical dervish. He comes to Rumi, this young kid who's reading this book, and he says, "Hey kid, what are you reading?" Very intensely. And Rumi looks at this man who came out of nowhere, with this beard and Sufi clothing, like this dervish clothing or whatever. And he says, "Nothing you would understand, old man. This is the newest knowledge of the time." As if he's saying that you don't have access to the future. And so what happens is this Shams, he's a very intense personality, mystical personality. He looks at Rumi and he takes the book in Rumi's hand and throws it in the fountain. And Rumi, in that moment, he's like, "Oh my God, why did I sit beside a fountain?" Rumi gets up. He is angered, but at the same time, a sort of anguish and this feeling of despair. And he looks at Shams and he says, "Do you know what you have done? This book was written with ink on piece of paper and it was thrown in the fountain." He says, "You have destroyed the newest sciences of the time." There was only one copy of that book. And it's in that moment where Shams is a mystic and he grabs the book from the fountain, gives it to Rumi. The book is completely dry and Rumi is just shocked, just silent shocked, as if he doesn't know what to say, speechless. And that's where Shams says to him, knowledge that can be wiped with water is not real knowledge. It's not the real knowledge. And that's the same thing that so many peoples have different desires in this realm. Endless kinds of desires through different angles. Every person is a different DNA. You can say, even if it's like the same category of a desire, but it's a different dimension of it. But the whole point was that while you're here in this system, which you know that it will end, desire the ultimate. Why not? How often does existence happen, Where after 4.5 billion years, there's an ability to even comprehend and ask questions. Someone once asked me how long it takes to prepare for these talks. I told them 4.5 billion years. It's remarkable. So much of the realm doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because there is more invisible space than visible matter. That means it's like the tip of an iceberg, but this tip of the iceberg looks like a sphere, you know? Anyways, Rumi in that story realizes that there is more. There is more to this life than just some sort of behavioral algorithm that is pointed by the outer realms, You know, imagine you were someone who listened to everything the outer realms told you before you even noticed you had a mind. Let's say you were someone who you had no concept of individualism, individuality, being your own being, you know. And so what tends to happen is that the outer realm inputs your mind. Either you move yourself or the world moves you. You know, Shakespeare says to be or not to be. You know, I say to be, to move or to be moved. That's it. These are the options. Either we ride the waves of this existential activity, whatever it is, and have the honesty to notice what is actually known about the system and what is unknown about the system, you know, and to usher ourselves in an era of multidimensional tolerance. Okay, guys, my attention came to the chat section. Welcome, everybody, and thank you, BK. Um, Joel, I really can't see what picture that. The sharpest says if one comes upon the concept of patience and is then in patience, oh, you mean impatient, is then in patience, confronts themselves with their undesirable past, which brings the fear, then patience has nothing to do with it, but courage does. Patience is the sharpest, I will tell you. Patience is the reason you can confront the fear. What do you say? Confront themselves with their undesirable past. So if your past is undesirable and your past brings fear, you know, so you want to confront the self which has this past fear. Now you say then patience has nothing to do with it, but courage does. You can't. The difference between, I would say, think of it this way: the person who, imagine you were walking in a hallway, and then suddenly an image, like an image of a centaur, appeared, you know? A mirage of a centaur appeared in this hallway. Centaur, you know, some mythical creature or whatever, right? Now, one person would see that, they would say, oh my God, centaur, impatience, the fear makes them stop looking at the path ahead. It is only if you're patient and you're willing to have additional information to see really what's there, then decide if you're afraid of it. You know, so you gotta have patience before you can have courage. And patience simply is, I would say, waiting. That's it. You're waiting to see more before you do. And then you say 1/4 of what you say makes 1/2 of the sense you're trying to make. Your math is off there. Oh, okay, okay. So, what can one say? The rude have dismissed themselves. So back to the talk, guys. Please keep in mind, Aristotle says it's the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. I'm just one person in a universe of a billion trillion stars, just sharing some views, you know. So keep that in mind, folks. Anyways, patience. If impatience is conditional, if the person is patient, 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 then something happens. They become suddenly impatient. That means their patience is based on the outer realms, what happens in the outer realms. To truly wonder about the attributeless is wondering about what is witnessing form here. And you need incredible patience on the mystical path. And mysticism opens up to you when you have seen everything, when you have noticed what is known to you, and now the unknown fascinates you. And without patience for the unknown, there is an error that is made that I've seen common in the New Age community. And on some level, it is part of a phase, but I would say on another level, it is attaching to an unknown, or you can say an autonomous archetype in your unconscious. There's this Zen story. A man is sitting on a grassland. He notices what he has called himself and what he has called the world are one moment of existence. He notices his experience of this one moment of existence fluctuates. This man finds a contentment with nature. The Zen story says there's a dark minion in another dimension, in another veil of the realm. The dark minion sees this man who has realized something about the truth of nature, which could be totally beyond nature. The Dark Minion goes to the Dark Lord and says, Dark Lord, this human being has got an insight of the realm. What do we do? And the Dark Lord, this is the moral of the Zen story. I read this online, guys. The story, the Dark Lord says to the Dark Minion, don't worry, whatever the human being experiences as truth, it immediately, the human being will make a belief out of it. So that's the mentality, that we explore, we find something, then we station ourselves in there. But if the exploration doesn't continue, we would have to use language. That means really the only reason we're speaking is because information doesn't have an instantaneous transfer. Imagine 8 billion people, their heads connected to some computer, some advanced computer. And what tends to happen is that every person's thoughts in every moment are accessible to every other person. So it would be a point where the civilization no longer needs language, speech, even no longer needs even communication to some degree. Um, Guys, just to make a note, at the end of this episode, there will be a Q&A, and I want you to treat the Q&A like an arcade video game. You know, you can select any any intensity or throw whatever, you know, it's fun. I'm just trying to make a point that we have to be patient with the changing world. There's so many different eyes here. On some level, we are living in this illusion that everything is normal and the species knows exactly what it's doing and it has a full control over its destiny. But when we look at it, so much of it is unknown. And so much of it we don't know yet, in the same way that we don't know what kind of children in the future, like in the next couple 100 years, what kind of children are going to be born. Imagine if the human species becomes hopeless. Oh no, 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 no. Suddenly we see like 40 Albert Einsteins were born, you know, in one generation or something, you know. You know, so imagine we see there's so many unknown variables to the realm that we can't just be 100% in a full known certainty of things, you know. I feel that first the person, they learn from the world. Or sorry, let me say it like this. First the person is learning from themselves. Then the person, after having learned from themselves, they learn from others. After the person has learned from the other, the person learns from the world. After the person learns from the world, the person wonders where the world is, and you return to the self. Capital S. And this self, as Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, this yogi, I remember him saying, he said, first the I am comes, then the I am goes. Oh, excuse me, first the I am myself comes. That means when you're born, you're like, I am myself. Yeah, I'm this, you know. I double checked in the mirror, I am this. Yeah. So Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, first the I am myself comes. Then the I am myself goes through the mature climbs of life. The person realizes, whoa, 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 my whole life I've been looking at this self, everything being filtered through the self, but whoa, 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 there's a world here? You know? So then Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, this yogi, he says, that after the I am myself leaves, the I am all comes. That means after the individual life had a beginning and reaches a completion while the physical body is intact, you know, the collective life in some sense begins. The I am all comes, where the human being, it is not enough to just be yourself when there is a whole world here, you know, to just be, you know, a human being in your own, you know, bunker of belief when there's a species, when it's literally like this massive army of knowledge moving through the void, you know. I think the most safest, most efficient way we can even provide a narrative and in the ethos is completely drop this set of class. It's like on a battlefield, everybody is the same, you know? And if we treated it as if not a physical battlefield of warfare, but a battlefield where the human being, you know that saying, they say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Imagine the enemy of 8 billion human beings is the natural unknown consequences that's going to happen. You know? That means, you know, in how many movies do we see it like this? Like in the movie Independence Day. You know, the aliens come to invade Earth. Suddenly, all human beings are like, "Yo," you know. It's like, okay, they stop. Human beings start different. Human beings stopped fighting with themselves because there was a bigger problem. Now we don't have an alien invasion, but I'm saying there's this whole massive unknown landscape that's just here. You know. And so imagine a world where everybody, there wasn't per se, everybody was just an explorer. We really haven't evolved much from being hunter-gatherers. We were hunter-gatherers of the outer realms. Somebody would find berries, that berries would be added into the tribe, and after years suddenly become a blackberry, and everybody had a blackberry. you know? So we were gathering outer phenomena. The outer world was fascinating. But now we have become hunter-gatherers of the inner realms, and there has been too many continental philosophers, you know, making the point that behind our eyes is not emptiness, you know, there is an inner realm. What does that mean? That means you look at your physical body and you're like, okay, first there had to be a world, then a body could be in a world, right? So now most people are entertaining the notion that they are I thought. The egoic construct. I am me, I am the I, you know? Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, there's a third part to his quote, I would add. I mean, it's part of the quote, part of his quote. He says, so first the I am, just to repeat the whole thing. First the I am myself comes, then the I am myself leaves, then the I am all comes, then the I am all leaves, then the I am comes, then the I am leaves. Then nature is. If your physical body needs a world, your physical self needs a physical world to be in, and we entertain a subjective self, that subjective self needs a subjective world to be in. Now, the issue is a person, it's very easy to see who you are, but if you were to fathom worlds, like how you fathom yourself throughout the day, it would be totally different. It would mean that the context of how you are a concept can consciously change. And that is such I would say, one of the biggest mysteries, how the context can change having nothing to do with the concept there, you know. That means really how the human being is different from all the other animals is that we stepped out of our context, and we see no other species has done that, which technically means we were pulled out. We were pulled out of nature's cycle, you know. Now there's scholars, for example, there was this gentleman named Terence McKenna, and he spoke about it as if it was a sort of like it was fathomable to see stardust from one planet coming to our planet on a cellular level, and this cell eventually was actually a plant. Do you know? It evolved eons to become a plant, and this plant somehow came to the creature. Engaged the psyche of this creature, and it was the interaction with a unique chemical relationship with the realm that snapped this creature out of its context. My playful view, I have a playful version too. I think actually what it was there was an extraterrestrial pilot, and guys, I'm saying this playfully. There was an extraterrestrial pilot. Imagine there was an extraterrestrial pilot, suddenly the extraterrestrial pilot messes up, the spaceship comes down, and it exactly comes down underneath a bunch of, let's say, chimps, or even back back in the time, the earliest creature, and so literally the radiation of this spacecraft could have pulled this creature out of its context. Even we can say, like linguistic professors say, there was meaning before there was language, right? So it could be that there is behind our eyes, even as Rene Descartes said, the mind-body dualism, there is a dimension. It could be that the mind has nothing to do with the body, but the mind can influence the body. Being born in a world is like being born in an imagination that you didn't imagine. In front of my eyes, I feel I am inside a cosmic mind, an unknown cosmic intelligent activity, as if all of life was one conscious event, or you could say it is due to consciousness that we can even unitize things. We are efforts of coagulations of rivers of image that turn into meaning. Right now, I like the way the sensory perception comes across to me is individualism, as if the idea of me, or what is navigating and maneuvering my attention in the moment, that is like the center of gravity. That is the center of gravity, as if I ask myself, where are the senses? And the way the brain is like, you know what it is? It's like the senses are like oxygen for the mind. Without the senses, there can't be any content for doership, right? There's a quote in somebody mentioned Christian wisdom, where it's to be in the world and not of it. To be in the world and not of it. Kind of like you're dreaming. Another way of saying life is a dream. That means you are in the dream, but you're not of the dream. You are in a dualistic framework of conscious existence and activity as a knower. But the knower within, which is the attributeless witness. That's my school of thought, where for me, the idea of the soul, it's like, for me, like, honestly, I'll be honest, when people speak about past lives, I'm like, that's adorable. I'm joking, let me tell you why. Because the thing is, it's like, if you consider what you are right now as the tip of the iceberg, to see past lives to the tip of the iceberg is not there's no validity to it. Do you know? Not in regards to a materialistic context, I'm saying philosophically engaging it. Guys, I think it's a good time to go into a quote tunnel. A quote tunnel is a part of these talks where I look up a certain theme or a certain person, and I read a bunch of quotes, pretty much. Okay, so into the patience quote tunnel we go. Guys, this quote I'm going to read is, I've said this before in other talks, one of the most incredible quotes in the English language. Michelangelo, genius is eternal patience. Samuel Johnson, great works are performed not by strength, but by perseverance. William Shakespeare, how poor are they that have not patience? What wound did ever heal but by degrees? Helen Keller says we could never learn to be brave and patient if there were only joy in the world. Carl Jung says even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness, and the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. It is far better to take things as they come along with patience and equanimity. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. Saint Francis de Sales, have patience with all things, but first of all with yourself. Elbert Hubbard, how many a man has thrown up his hands at a time when a little more effort, a little more patience would have achieved success. Virgil, come what may, all bad fortune is to be conquered by endurance. Wow. This quote, guys, is you want to know what it feels like to be on the shoulder of a giant? Read this quote, guys. I'm going to post it here. E. Joseph Kosman says the greatest power is often simple patience. Lao Tzu says, I have just three things to teach: simplicity, patience, compassion. These three are your greatest treasures. Saint Augustine, patience is the companion of wisdom. Ralph Waldo Emerson, adopt the pace of nature, her secret is patience. Mahatma Gandhi, if patience is worth anything, it must endure to the end of time, and a living faith will last in the midst of the blackest storm. Henry Nouwen says to learn patience is not to rebel against every hardship. Guys, think of it this way. I'm going to actually step out of this quote zone. I find that a person has two choices. Either they can look at a moment and go with an emotional evaluation, or the person in any moment, anywhere, in whatever place, world, position, the person looks at the design, the mechanics of the moment, how it's working pretty much. You look at the design and geometry of existence, instantly the experiencer's position becomes clear. Sri Saridad Maharaj says, just be still, and the wisdom that has followed you for eons will finally find you. Patience is mastery. Without patience, I would say, you don't even enjoy the artwork you're looking at. Imagine it was fixed, this idea that every 2 seconds the mind could generate 4 ideas, imagine. So it would be a situation where everything you would look at, after 2 seconds, you would have 4 ideas about, 4 angles you would see. So that patience would allow that 2 second to be nothing. That means if the reward of the activity is way more, then patience makes sense. If the reward of the activity is not more, then the person is impatient. They want, it's like, I got better things to do. They run out. I think there is a mystery here. I think that we have gotten comfortable in the human ideological chair too soon. And it's like someone sitting on a chair, and imagine someone that be millions of people every day are praying for something better. They're praying for a savior. And it is not wrong, but I'm saying it's as if when you have sat on a chair, that means it's like the person checks to see if they can't get up, then. It's as if somebody on a chair and there's people standing in front of that person, and the person's like, somebody help me get off this chair, And people are like, why isn't this guy standing up? And they ask him, and they're like, why don't you get up from the chair yourself? And the person's like, I don't have the strength. I don't have the past. This is my judgment. I don't deserve to get up from this chair. I have to stay on this chair. My ancestors were on this chair. If I deviate from sitting on this chair, I don't know why it would be. What is the meaning of life? If I get up from this chair, that's why I need a savior, something beyond my knowledge that can change me. And so the person would be like, bro, just get up from the chair. And it's the same with language. Really, I'm that person, I would say, saying that language cannot contain experiential truth. And that is evident. Language is at best a finger pointing, to the mirror behind your eyes. I feel after object worship, we went to subject worship. Now we've reached a point where we're like, what else after a subject, after idol worship, ideal worship, what else can we do? And this is where novelty comes in. And novelty is a permission to allow the unknown to be unknown until it reveals itself. That means, imagine going on what's a good example? It's imagine talking to a human being that you don't get to see often, And if the person had an opinion, it would as if kind of, I don't know how to say it. I think Alan Watts said it best. If you could dream any dream and imagine you had dreamed any dream you wanted, at the end you would want a dream that would surprise you. And you would want to return back to the element of the unknown after through looping through the ideological language of the position of the realm. Language is so unique, such a unique phenomenon that it can enter, you can, like if language was a mask, this mask can be put on by yourself and it can be put on by the world on your face. But the moment we notice that there's something more than the object and the subject, and it has to do with the presence of energy prior to the second memory developing. That means, let's say the brain is a memory generator, and these memories, let's see it, old school, like files in a file cabinet, right? We need at least two files, to have a history. So I would say energy is there before there is separation. So think of it this way. Right now I'm speaking and we're animate creatures that move. So if we are saying our movement and our sounds, the sounds we generate, our noise, is our knowledge, then the only thing left that could be the unknown is the absence of sound and noise. So you can ultimately be patient if you are stillness, silence, and space. If you don't fear these three, you actually, while you're a living being, an evolutionary creature, you wonder about these things. The unknown is the elephant in the room of every belief system. Who knew? We have all this knowledge, but it's in an unknown place, so we know nothing. Guys, I'm actually gonna end this talk a bit earlier, but I'm gonna read something before, an essay. So, guys, I just saw the chat section. There will be Q&A at the end. I'm just going to read this essay from the source of language, a book I wrote in 2017, and just a series of essays on the source of language. This essay is called A Description Beyond Words. Once you are the witness of duality, you are no longer affected by the games of this life or the games of language. How much of our experience is beyond language that we are not acknowledging? Who the thinker is says a lot about the design of reality that will be received. When peace, happiness, and bliss are found in a moment thoughtless, why does the ego need to continue the matrix? A description beyond words is a poetic rebellion. It doesn't matter if you have good genes, bad genes, or ripped genes. Philosophy is a titan set loose that will no longer be chained by the past. The clarity of what is the experience of the whole moment is the great guide. Speak in profound ways and listen as the soul of the soul of the soul of the earth whispers back into the ear of its creation. Old psychology has a lot to reflect on. There's more to life than objectivity. Some nights the moon and stars seem to be carried by one source of intelligence. Where else can we go when our experience of life is here? Much mystery is spoken before, for eternal commands have changeless echoes. You are the world, and so am I. What a beautiful reality we live in. Nature was never separate in regards to life intelligence. How would a letter to the gods of man's mind begin? My dear existence, I am here for you. A mantra for the wise and the great consciousness of man. If I was to look at my life so far, I would say I was a blind student. I became a mystic poet. And as these words are being written, the philosopher warrior is marching into the fields of the war of knowledge on the unknown fields of love. You must live for your whole moment. All that is within and without is divine. Once all arrows of desire have turned to lotus flowers, God was never separate from your eyes. For what unspeakable intelligence could open your eyes? The unborn intelligence of creation is so beautifully, spontaneously alive. Cheers to the cup of the Zen master that was never full or empty. The wisdom of presence means, just like it is said, there is dark energy, dark matter, and just too dark to see, there are two unknown gaps in man's mind, that once thought and language fade like a fading cloud within a clear sky, as beautifully and poetically as it can be said. Your true nature of self is an eternal clarity beyond the observance of temporal dualistic change. Sorry to break it down to you, just like how you are within the universe and the universe is within you, God is within you and you are within God. As natural intelligence reminds language of the empty observer within, life can in ways so supreme, fast, and divine emerge as the destiny of thought of all thoughts. As the destiny of the thought of all thoughts. For as the void roars, we recognize the strength of our own jaws. Is the cosmos a story of the emptiness of God's omniscient design? These words have no intention other than that which they communicate. It is okay of those who feel they are left behind to be reborn from the fears of chaos and the ashes of a dying global society, to the great remembrance that tears of bliss could never be put to words. Am I a philosopher? No. I am one moment of life just playing with words. You, my beloved reader, are the God in man's eyes. The sadhu and the sadhu are aware of a divine self beyond words. Do I see intuition, in quotations I've written this, do I see intuition shouting from the distance? Stillness and silence is wisdom in the sands of a changing world. There's a great integration of intelligence occurring all over the cosmos. Do you notice the meaning of these words was never in this book, but within your mind? Is your mind separate? Is your moment separate from your mind? The origin of thought and the source of language is how the butterfly is also being the caterpillar in its memory. What is time in a changing, evolving world? If a monkey evolved, could that intelligence also suggest that the whole world is evolving? And if so, how far can our small temporal human minds measure? Cosmic wisdom comes from a cosmic being. Are you one? Are you one? Oh, the one is written in caps. Would Da Vinci accept the criticism of a blind man on the Mona Lisa in the first week that he drew it? Technology has pointed to an artificial intelligence beyond control. Did an ant create the boot that crushed it? Ideas of a singularity do not promote much action. The greatest catalyst for human civilization is for every human is for every human to ask themselves the the greatest catalyst for human civilization is for every human asking themselves who they are and recalibrating to the true nature and natural state, which is not a concept, rather an awareness. You are paying attention to your life in deeper and profound ways and realizing the simplicity of cosmic presence beyond an individual idea. Spontaneous wisdom is a glorious task destined by divinity. Let us not get stuck in the word soul in quotations. The moment is the heart of hearts. Let us hear it beat beyond words. In the silence of the cosmos, all voices are heard. Forget the word Akash. Return to the one and only presence of home. Yeah, this is the coin flip of man's psyche. Either everything was full from the beginning, there was nothing wrong, or everything is wrong. You know? Okay, guys, so that's pretty much for the talk. I think I got every idea I wanted out there. Just one last thing about the command of existence. There's this quote from George Patton. I saw it online. He says, "You must serve before you command." And in ancient traditions, they would say the mind is a lousy master, but a great servant. So it's this strange situation where you have to serve your own mind. And then you get acquainted with it, but this is not conceptual, this is not ideological, this is not narrative based, this is not trying to find theosophical treasure. You know, the wise have climbed the mountain of the fool. Their patience is their additional dimension. So I would say any person in any situation, let's say somebody comes out of nowhere and asks you an important question, you got to make a decision. You know? Imagine in that moment you just sit and you're just super still. For 10 minutes, you don't make a decision, you don't even have an opinion, you just watch and wait. And imagine your own mind, which could subconsciously be solving all your problems the moment it notices it. It's kind of like treating your intelligence as like your attention. Okay, this is an incredibly multidimensional metaphor, but it's like, guys, this is the last thing I'm going to say. Then Q&A is going to open. Then people can Ask anything and I'll respond. Okay, here. We'll do this for the Coliseum. So guys, while I finish the story, people can ask questions if they have any. God, where was I going with this? Yeah, ripples of a pond. Imagine your body is a candle, your mind is a candle, the flame of the candle. Now, imagine the light in the room, the candela of illumination, is like a pond. And you have to literally let your mind settle in the room you enter, or in the moment you enter, or even if there's suddenly evocation of an inner context. So when somebody says a problem or something, you know, or a challenge, or any design that is being engaged to advance something forward. I would say there was this saying they say, where there's a will, there's a way, something like that. That will is the grand mystery of life. Like we are, our mind is literally the elephant in the room of an inanimate universe. Oh man, too much elephant. Too many elephants in this talk, you know. So, anyways, guys, Q&A is open. So let's go over the chat section. Okay. Guys, questions about, like, if there's questions about the topic, um, but here. Excuse me. Joel says, how can one maintain peaceful thinking? Well, if you're a thought, the only way you can maintain it is conditionally. You got to keep that thought around. Do you know? So you gotta treat peace like a prayer bead you need around your neck. You know? So that means it's like, I'm telling you, if you're not a thought, then you're not defined by thoughts. It doesn't mean you have peace. It doesn't mean all your suffering goes away. It just means, just like how you could notice a bird flying in the sky and pass away, you saw it, perceived it, but the bird had nothing to do with you, you can begin seeing language and subjects and any idea communicated to you. So I hope that was um, a worthy answer, Joel of Sutherland, you know. Yeah. So I would say there is this view also that some people are trying to find peace. Some people feel the peace is there, they are just not seeing it. I would say those people who peace is in the causal position of their psychology, the effect would be peaceful. But if peace is not in the causal position and they want peace, it's like, what is that? You know? It's like someone punching people and being like, yo, we gotta be peaceful, guys, please. So Pete says shadow beings feed on fear. Bro, shadows don't have digestion systems, you know? Um, But I think I know what you mean. If a person chooses to entertain a weak archetype, their energy will instantly, like a balloon being popped, leave them. That means if the person chooses to resonate with the efficiency of the moment, the efficient vision of the moment. I have this thing, guys, where I say, in any moment, there's a genius vision. And if you're patient and intuitive enough, you can find it. Any moment, I mean, you can think about it like this. Imagine you want to build like an engine. Now you know that there's so many people who can build an engine way better than you. Do you know? So what does that mean? That means the potential to build a greater engine is always there. I would tell you, if you allow the unknown to be unknown and let the world be like this, where you live your day, but at the same time, in various moments, especially moments of communication, do you know, in any context or any sort, the person lets life make the first chess move. Then you see what the chess move was. Then you see how an inner realm has moved the outer realm. Then you can also, in accordance to how the outer realm was moved, then your inner realm can move the outer realm. You know, that's pretty much dialogue, really. It's like language is a bridge between minds. That sort of, you know, language is like the structure, and sound is like the substance made. This bridge between the inner realms is made from. Sharpest says, cool, what is the source of your inspiration? Mysticism? You gotta be a bit more clear, Sharpest. Do you mean the source of my inspiration for these talks? Or, I think that's what you mean. The talks were just like, I don't know, in 2014, the idea, the name Mr. Within occurred to me, and I thought like 10,000 talks in this lifetime. I was like, is that even possible? And so I decided to try it. You know? That's it. Like, that's the whole inspiration that we have. Because if you really think about it, what are our options on this planet? Physical activities. We either have physical ways of living, either we're focused on the body's life, or we are focused on more the subjective meaning of the realm. You know? That means imagine this person who's just fallen in love and is in love. He comes to his mystical mystical grandfather or parents or something, and the person's like, I'm in love, something like Shakespearean level, you know. And imagine the mystics are just like, who is in love? Who is that one saying I am in love? There's always just this, we should give it a name probably. We should call it the witness algorithm. Or the witness card. The witness card. We should call it that. The witness card. The unknown witness card. Yeah. That means it's like something that its content, that it's like the witness, what's being witnessed is there. Like right now, I can see an object, but what is seeing this object, we can't even tell right now based on our most secular view. Whether we're a subject, we're a hallucination of atoms, or there is something moving this in accordance to some sort of design-based intelligence, That means it's like the person can move a rock in a yard and see ants underneath. Do you know? And at the same time, we're like creatures on a rock. So there is definitely greater horizons. It's just that we as human beings are between worlds. We are between the animate and the inanimate. We are aware of our mortality, but if you're a pet owner, look at your pet and see, is your pet aware of its mortality? This is why there was, in George Orwell, he was like, ignorance is bliss. Because sometimes when you don't see something, you don't have to be responsible for. This is why sometimes I would say, without a sort of fearlessness, that means if it becomes more important for you to know what's going on, then the fear doesn't make sense from the beginning. So anyways, guys, if there's more questions, keep them coming. If not, and there's more than 5 minutes of silence, like a snowman, I will melt out of cyberspace. Joel says, do you agree with the Orwell quote about ignorance? Yeah, I agree with it in the sense that the less you know, the less you need to be, the less you're suffering, yes. What does that mean? That means it's the ostrich way of living. I don't know if this was intended comically or not, but it's as if, like, what happens to the ostrich, at least in literature, in realms of narrative, the ostrich, when it gets scared, instead of running away as an efficient tactic, fight or flight, the ostrich puts its head in the ground. That means sometimes that ignorance could be comfort, but it's blindness. So it could be that sometimes in our most comfortable states, those are the states where we don't see anything. Actually, we're too convinced by the chair of that moment that we're seated on. So for me, if there was a sensitivity to language, that would technically mean endless patience. And who was it? Michelangelo. He said, genius is eternal patience. What does that mean? That means it's as if somebody looked at the problem a bit longer than everybody else. And there was nothing genius aside just from wondering about the source a bit longer. So Joel says, I often feel I react like an ostrich. You know how the solution is for that fear? First of all, fear is natural, and there is, you can say, an inner fear, a self-imposed fear, and then a fear where you gotta actually be aware, Like if you're on a battlefield, you gotta fear like, imagine you're in ancient Greece fighting in a battlefield, you gotta fear for your life there. Do you know what I mean? That means fear, it's like, I don't know, it's a different situation. So anyways, what I'm saying is, like, it doesn't make sense. If you rationalize it, fear doesn't make sense. It just can't make sense. It's an absence. It's like anything the person fears, they stop looking into more. What happens when a person is afraid of heights? They don't go near heights. Now imagine someone is afraid of intimacy. They won't go near moments of intimacy. Imagine someone is afraid of speaking. They won't go to moments where they're speaking. That fear, I can tell you, it's either you get to live or the fear gets to live. That means if the fear lives, the natural self the person gets pushed out of their sincere resonance, most likely. Like, we really are behind as a species in regards to how advanced we can be. if we were to be an advanced civilization, multidimensional tolerance, no longer good or bad. Do you know? That shit is old school. You know? Like, excuse my language, but somebody has to say it. Like, you know? Just the good and bad, and all of human morality is the on and off switch effect. Pretty much night and day has made us fear and have courage. You know, when it's visible, everybody has courage. When it's dark, everybody is afraid. You know? I would say fear and desire, of course, in one talk, I remember saying fear and desire are two sides of the same coin. So you fear because you desire an outcome, or you fear losing something, or fear getting something, you know? And I would say, think of it this way. What is the more efficient strategy? You are afraid of something, you, instead of carelessly thinking that's what it means to confront the fear, to just carelessly run in, you act like a designer. That means before you are afraid, you know, before you accept your fear, study it. Look at the design and geometry of your fear, you know? Because if the person cannot look at, this is even in back in the day, you know, let's say if you were a warrior on a battlefield, if you can't look at your enemy, you're done. If you can't look at your opponent, you're done. Do you see? So in reality, the person not has to have an ability that they can look at the opponent, the resistant forces in nature, you know, that they are aware of the whole battlefield. Do you know what I mean? They're aware of even the whole implication of the thing. And that awareness can't have fear. Do you know? Because it's like, what's the point? It's a going forth machine. It's a changing world that only goes forth. Like I said, the command of existence. It's as if existence was lying around doing nothing and somebody was like, oh my God, get to work. You know, and all of manifestation, the universe started working, you know? They asked this person, how are you so fearless? And the person's like, fear? What's that concept? I've never heard of it. Fear? It's like, what is that word? You know, the person can have no concept of fear. This is why children are incredibly brave. You know, it is also part of that ignorance is bliss too. But I'm saying if you're conscious, you can't be ignorant. And there is conscious bliss. It's not that only ignorance is blissful. It's not that only we numb ourselves we can get through this life. You know what I mean? Whether based on the outer realms or the inner realms. The person, sometimes I think in the same way, I'm telling you this, every living being is obsessed with themselves until they realize their idea of self is based on the idea of the world first, and then how they have considered themselves separate. So that's what I can say. Joel says is a fear of prediction, is fear a prediction of the future? It can be, you know. Yeah, it's a sense of why would you have fear? It's a sense of returning to the unknown. That's usually people, you know, the unknown, the mysterious, what they can't consciously have an opinion on yet is really, you know, the fear. Same way in the sense that if we suddenly took a time machine, like imagine we went back and we showed some advanced technology from now to like cavemen or something, like it would blow their mind or something, you know? Imagine you took a disco ball at night and you put it on a, you know, on the top of the cave of the, on the top of the cave of like these cavemen. And the cavemen are just looking at this light and their minds are blown. And you know, so that's about fear. Then Sharpa says, I'm willing to accept criticism. I'm quite resilient and peace between one another is currently my personal goal. I want to conquer. I've said quite a lot to be criticized. I'd love to hear your opinion based on what I've offered. Can you be a bit more specific? So sharp is, I don't know if you can be a bit more specific if about what you want me to share an opinion on. I could help you with that. Sharpest says, I pray you get 20,000 talks. Yeah, man, 10,000 talks is enough to make my point. Imagine I give these 10,000 talks and they're like, Mr. Within, what was the point? What was the point of these 10,000 talks? And I'm like, it could be summed up in one word: smile. What else can you do when you are in the presence of God? Guys, anybody who asks questions, feel free to ask. When everybody's done with the questions, I'll leave the cyberspace realm. By the way, guys, anybody who would like to support this channel, I would encourage you to join the Discord community. There's a link in the description of the videos, all the videos. Join the Discord community. And for those who would like to help my efforts and like what I have in plan for the evolution of the Discord community, they can support the Patreon as well. The Patreon is pretty much, I share throughout the day. I scroll, I surf the web, like pretty much after some point I replaced listening to music to listening to what people were actually saying. I don't think enough people realize the value of the internet, that it's actually like a database of worldviews. Really, all that we're doing as human beings is information processing, right? This is the most basic level. When we talk about even genes that we're made of, we say the gene is self-replicating. What does that mean? That means the gene's survival is a verb, but the gene itself is a noun. That means nouns, if they don't become verbs, they die, or they can't exist. So guys, a gene is an example of how a noun has to be a verb to survive, So this self-replication, literally that's what happens, when people even meet other people, they're replicating their past experiences through the face of the other until the more the person speaks, the more is revealed. That means, I will tell you, patience is the whole point, I will tell you, just try it out. There was Gurdjieff, this mystic. Gurdjieff, at the age of 3, he's 3 years old, and his father dies, and his father looks at his 3-year-old son and he says, "Son, I have nothing to leave behind for you. All I have is these words." And he gives his son a bit of wisdom on his deathbed, the father, and he says, whatever you do in this life, whenever you get angry, somebody comes and says something that makes you angry, wait one whole day before you respond to that person. Let's say you're somewhere and somebody you care about says something that makes you incredibly angry. Literally dismiss that moment like a receptionist, postpone postpone that moment, do you know? And after one day, that was the advice Gurdjieff's father was saying, after one day, go and respond. And you will notice you have seen so many angles of that same situation, you know? So, thanks for the kind words, Sharpest. And really, guys, all that I'm saying is it's more unknown than known, the system. This renders language hollow overall. So, Sharpest, I will tell you, join the Discord. The Discord is a discussion, group discussion community where there's different topics I bring up and people, like groups, there's a lot of people there. There's discussions. I feel I wanted to say like 10 words there, but I only got one word out, you know? So, yeah. See this channel, guys, as the effort of your species. Patience is eternal genius. And if Plato says time is the moving image of eternity, an eternal witness means an unconditional sight. That means we right now are wielders of conditional energetic existence. But to become acquainted with the presence of nature, as it appears to be void, as it appears to be singular, as it appears to be dualistic, and as it appears to be infinite. As Rumi says, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a place I will meet you there. I think the Vikings called that Valhalla, but anyways, guys, thanks for listening. You know, and as always, you know, the world, the command of existence is go forth. It's like a mountain climb. It's a journey, you know, until it's complete. We will never know its purpose, you know, and its completion is based on how our attention treats it. So study your attention, study the presence of how you're being in the moment, and if you notice that you're beyond language, that's kind of like Tony Stark noticing he's not the Iron Man suit. And that's when you can really use language, use the Iron Man suit, and your inner realm shifts from being language oriented first to being image oriented. So that means whenever you hear people speak, whenever you see whatever, it's like the inner cinematic language can be noticed. And when that internal cinematic language is noticed, I will tell you, you will realize how we are like fish, like empty space is like an ocean, and we are like fish, and there's intelligent currents. Like a fish goes into a current, and inside the ocean, suddenly it speeds up. It's like, oh my god, how am I so fast? You know, the fish doesn't realize, but there is an intelligent current, and I will tell you that for something that is, I find, even from an incredibly secular standpoint, acceptable, that we are wondering about intelligent rhythms. That means states of living, not just states of static being, but advanced states of living, where in those rhythmic states, the intelligence is not individual. You know, there was this article saying human beings are using 12% of their brain, you know? Now, this article, of course, it's definitely. I mean, there is a few holes in the ship, but I'll tell in the ship. But I'll tell you this. Um, 12% of our brain and its usage is being accessed by individualism. It could be the case that there is potential for collective ways of being, just like how we see a bunch of birds. You see all those birds in the sky, like synchronistically flying together. It could be the case that if there is great collective rhythmic human activity, that greater brain percentage is used. So what it is as the world becomes more collective, it's like knowledge is becoming more instant. So technically, we are all being updated the more we realize we're in the same situation. We're kind of all being updated together, like just how time goes forward. I feel lions roar and the human being asks questions. Questions are another way of, roaring. But anyways, guys, I hope this episode was helpful. Um, and those who can observe before they can act, they will always be able to act better. See efficiency in the causal position, and the effect will be efficient. That means make it more important for you to notice efficiency throughout the day than inefficiency, and you'll be fascinated how much in it there's going to be a stoic transformation. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening.